Welcome into the Paul Kuharsky podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com, brought to you by Zen Sports, best place to place bets if you're in Tennessee. Happy to be with you to talk Titans. Going to cover a couple things and then get into our uh, frequent question and answer session, which I've been enjoying immensely. Good to see a bunch of you jumping in. Retweet to alert your friends, share on Facebook, point them to YouTube, etc., etc., etc. While you're there, punch subscribe, like, and if you're listening later on one of the many audio platforms, please do the same. I want to start off talking about Rand Carthon, who's getting good reviews for his media availability the other day with L'Jarius Sneed's, following L'Jarius Sneed's media availability. I talked to him for about 20 minutes at the owners' meetings. I know Wyatt did as well. Seems to be opening up somewhat, which is great news. So I resent, frankly, that so many people in the media, especially people who are in the media but don't come to press conferences or not in the media level, are saying, and I'm talking to Braden Gall and Zach Lyons, who just came off the air, and I sent them a message during their broadcast of a football show, and we joked about it. But they're saying, "Oh, thank God, Rand Carthon's finally speaking. Gentry Estes and Paul Kuharsky must be so relieved. They should give Rand a standing ovation. He's finally giving in to their demands that the general manager speak." And then they talk for 20 minutes about the things that Rand Carthon said, the general manager who, in a market like Tennessee, who's renowned for his affable manner, spoke to the media. It's great. It's part of his job and what he should do, and it's been fantastic. I got a lot of stories out of it from Orlando, and people got more stories out of it from his short podium session. Why the fact that reporters want to ask questions of decision makers rather than be left to presume things is a bad thing is ridiculous. And then a lot of people, not just those two, but I've heard it from a lot of people. Oh, the reporters should be so happy Rand's finally doing what they want. And then, okay, if you don't want us to ask Rand questions, then don't use any of his answers. Shut up. Don't broadcast it live on your shows. How about? I don't want to hear it on your airways. And then be quiet in terms of anything he said. Don't use it. If you were happy when Rand Carthon was in the background silent, then, and you're mocking those of us who wanted to ask him questions and get actual information, then shut up now and don't use what we're producing for you. You're content stealers as it is when you come out and don't ask a question. So that's bullshit. He talked with me openly about a blue chip versus one blue chip versus two quality players in the draft. The Sneed trade details and his knee. The other day talked about the green dot guy, how it could be a rookie inside linebacker, but how it doesn't have to be a linebacker. That's an interesting nugget that wouldn't have been produced, by the way, if he wasn't at a podium answering questions, and delightfully so. Talked about the safety market and how he thinks now the veterans will be a post-draft thing. And then he's great at offering texture and detail, which is why it's so good to have him talking more frequently when he tells a story about the Sneed family being shown around the Titans facility and going to get a drink for L'Jarius's young son. And just the timing of NFL Network showing a key Kansas City playoff game and Sneed coming up to make a big tackle right at the right moment when they happen to be paying attention to what's on the screen. Rand really comes to life when he gives stories, shares stories like that. Same thing with talking about Ridley and last year when they were talking about DeAndre Hopkins and talking to DeAndre Hopkins, and they were kind of sorting through a bunch of guys that had worked out together and Ridley was in that group, and they were hearing that guys, all pro caliber guys, Pro Bowl caliber guys, were stealing tricks and tips and watching very intently the things that Calvin Ridley were doing. And that made a big impression on them that Ridley was a guy amongst all of these quality guys who was drawing the attention of his peers. That's a great, textured, informative story that now will be something that we probably touch on multiple times with Calvin Ridley, and that sticks with Calvin Ridley. That's fantastic to hear that from the general manager. I'm sorry for those of you that prefer that he not talk. So kudos to Rand. I hope he continues to talk, and the frequency of it increases. If he's good like he's been lately, he's a resource for them in telling the team's story, and this team needs to tell its story. It's been a largely uninteresting team. It's been a largely secretive team, too secretive on stuff that didn't necessarily need to be secrets. And it needs to sell PSLs to a new stadium that are very expensive. Entice the fans by sharing texture and detail. It's great. Houston Texans are going to be the favorites in the AFC South for a lot of people by a wide margin. I think if you're picking anybody else, you're really going to be an outlier. And I know it's going to be incredibly annoying to Titans fans. Titans have had a very nice offseason. We don't know what the draft is going to hold, but it's hard not to look at the free agent class and be excited. Not everybody's going to pan out the way that everybody imagines. Not everybody they brought in. It never works that way for teams that are wear the crown of the free agent gold, silver, and bronze medalists. But the Texans, too, are right up there. I mean, if you look at what they've done on defense just up front, they've added Hunter and Autry and Fadukasi. I mean, two guys they already had, re-signed Barnett. That is going to be a very challenging front. Aziz Al-Shair, a heck of a player. Akuda as a corner who, if he gets past some things and gets into, turns more into the kind of player everybody thought he was going to be when he came out, could be a real addition at corner. Take a chance on CJ Henderson, who could be a real gravy player. And then this week they trade for Stephon Diggs. Look, Stephon Diggs is not what he was, but he's still a really good receiver. Adding another guy to the long list I tweeted out this week of the type of guys L'Jarius Sneed will be covering if the Titans use him to mirror the best receiver on other teams. Though you've also got Dell and Collins, who are handfuls. That's a heck of a three-pack at receiver for C.J. Stroud. This is a really good, well-rounded football team that caught a lot of attention, turned a lot of heads last year, and deservingly so with the big turnaround they had. And you could legitimately look at the Houston Texans on paper. We're in April. Everything's on paper right now. And say that they could be the second best team in the AFC South going in. And I think there'll be people picking them for the AFC Championship game and for the Super Bowl. No secret, people will be picking them for the AFC Championship game. I think they'll be, for people looking to get away from the Chiefs, the Texans are going to be a Super Bowl pick heading into the season. I know that's gonna drive a lot of you crazy who hate the Texans as Titans fans and want to look a different direction in the AFC South, which I need to get into soon. Is this as good as the division has been talent-wise since when? I want to go through that and look at it. I see a lot of questions here. I'm excited about that, and we shall dig in. Thanks for coming. Hit retweet, share, etc., and we will get into some things here. So MB says, I don't rank anyone on paper. I just say the Texans have improved, but we'll see how much. Well, I mean, this is the time of year that things line up on paper. I could say, okay, we won't discuss how the division stacks up until a month into the season when we've seen teams play. And that'd be a really exciting conversation. Texans have improved, and we'll see how much. The Titans have improved, and we'll see how much. All right, everybody, have a good afternoon. Riveting. Mona Patino says, people forget we helped them win the division by beating the Jags. Who's forgotten? Like, you win the division, you win the division. Doesn't matter how you win the division. Year before, you helped the Jaguars win the division by losing to the Jaguars. You think everybody runs around saying, hey, you remember in 2022 when the Jaguars won the division, how exactly that went down? You remember when the Titans went to the Super Bowl in 1999? You remember how exactly that went down? No. All right, catching up here. So let's see what you've got. Adam says, now that Rand has most of 2 free agencies under his belt and 1 draft, what are my thoughts on him as the GM? Do I think he has a bright future? It's still too early to say. We need to see how these guys do. The draft is more important than free agency in terms of building a long-term roster. And this is not all Rand solo. Chad Brinker has had a significant role in this, not to take away from Rand, but to give to Brinker, who was certainly instrumental in the L'Jarius Sneed deal. But the collaborative effort has been very productive in producing a much better roster and in spending their money. The one thing that's funny to me is they said, they really did a pivot to get to Ridley, and they really did a pivot to get to Sneed. So what were the plans before Ridley and Sneed when you're talking about really the best available receiver and the best available corner at 2 positions that they were largely desperate to get help at, right? I mean, it could have been something on the defensive line. I've heard Reader maybe. I don't buy that it was an Autry Al-Shire thing, because that was in a different time frame than both of these. So no. Logan Grady with the interesting thing. Burks a worse first pick than Farley. Agree? Absolutely not. Burks has played some, and Burks has made some plays. Now, he's not a good first-round pick at this stage by any means, but Farley has done absolutely nothing. You've never seen Farley play well. Burks has had a couple games where he played well. Burks has had a couple plays where you said, whoa, Farley has not had those. Farley's, I think, a worse pick by a good margin. Robert says the Texans are going all out until they have to pay Stroud. Well, that's what teams with quarterbacks on rookie contracts do. What do you think the Titans are up to? Brad asks, what's the pick if Alt is gone at 7? If Alt is gone at 7, one of the receivers may be there. I think if Neighbors is there, I might take him over Alt. I would take him over Alt if they're both there. Neighbors would be the pick to me at 7. If Alt is gone at 7, you consider all 3 of the receivers, whichever one is there. Neighbors number 1 to me. Fashanu, I think, is being underrated all of a sudden somehow. I don't know if you take him at 7. A trade back, even with Alt there, is more and more attractive to me. I don't think – I don't know what the Titans think, right? What Bill Callahan thinks is the most important thing here. But the more you read and hear from people who know the draft far better than I do and know these college players, the space between Alt and Fashanu and Latham and some of these other guys is not a massive cavern. So, I mean, if they see Alt and a big space and everybody else, then you got to take Alt. But if they see Alt bunched with these other guys pretty tightly, and you can go from 7 to 11 and still get one of those other guys, then you got to go from 7 to 11 or 12 or 13 if you can to get a pick that allows you to address not only left tackle in the first 3 rounds, but left tackle and edge and receiver to me. And if you can address all 3 of those Thursday and Friday, you're in great shape. I don't think Ed says surprising that plan A was keeping Autry and Shire and pivot to a guy like Ridley. I don't think that's how it went. I mean, I think that keeping Autry and Al Shire was part of plan A. But I don't think I don't think that's a direct correlation. I think there's something else in plan A, something else big in plan A that came apart that had them shift to Ridley. And, the timing, Ridley couldn't happen until after Wednesday, right? When the timing passed that if the Jaguars re-signed him, they'd still lose the 3rd to the Falcons from the trade instead of a 2nd. So his clock didn't really start until Wednesday when everything else started on Monday. So I'm pretty convinced that's not a direct correlation. I think Sneed's knee, Robert Stewart, sorry. Any feelings about Sneed's knee after the presser? A lot of folks thinks it's a problem going forward. Who knows? Well, I said on the game this week with Robbie and Rextra that at the owners meeting, I had probably at least 6 media types, approach me and say, yeah, he's got a real problem with his knee. It's a degenerative condition. Don't know degenerative over what period of time. Titans certainly comfortable with it. Rand Carthon told me, important thing is that he plays on Thursday or Sunday or Monday when the Titans have a game. So they're certainly okay with him missing some practice and maintaining it how he needs to maintain it. He said he knows how to handle it. So he didn't deny that there's some kind of long-term maintenance that needs to be done over the course of a season. So, it could be a problem, but, I think it's a risk they're willing to take. And 2 or 3 years of Sneed, obviously handled it awfully well last year. So it's a wait and see kind of thing. Brian asks, any idea what kind of scheme Wilson will run on defense? Press, zone, blitz, heavy? It's going to be a lot like the old scheme. But right now it's going to have to blitz a lot more because they don't have the people up front. So it depends on what they're able to add in terms of edge rushers. And God, the philosophy's been to be able to rush for and cover with numbers. They don't need to cover with numbers now with better corners, adding a Woozy and Sneed. You should be able to solo up on good receivers. They need a second safety. Maybe May, maybe Simmons. I still like Diggs. There are 3 good veteran safeties out there at least. I would expect them to sign one of them after the draft and not draft a safety. I expect them to address other positions. But Brian Callahan said largely that the defense was successful and can continue to be successful doing largely what it did. So I wouldn't expect dramatic change on defense. LD asks, if I'm making the decision, would I go chalk and draft Alt if there, or trade back if possible? I'm leaning more and more to trading back and taking Fashanu or Latham. Do I think Farley gets a shot to play this year? I mean, Farley will be in camp because financially it makes sense for them to have Farley in camp. Will Farley play at a level that tells them They could be confident in him as like the third or fourth outside cornerback. I doubt it. I think Farley's not a very good cornerback who's broken mentally. So I would not expect him to be a contributor, but we'll see. He's also got the same corners coach that he had last year. So we shall see. What was that just came across? Kyle Van Noy back with the Ravens. Do I think most scouts are pretty confident Alt is can't miss? I mean, I think most scouts are pretty confident that Alt is going to be a good player. Can't miss, like, can't miss at what level? He's going to be a good player. Is he going to be a player that's worth the 7th pick in the draft? Undoubtedly. I think most people think he's going to be a good to very good player. Are there going to be players who are better than him at other positions available at 7? Maybe. And are there going to be other left tackles in this draft who wind up being better than Alt? Absolutely conceivable. Adam says it seems unlikely to him that Alt and Neighbors are both gone at 7. Is it unlikely to me? I think it's unlikely they're both gone, but I think it's pretty likely that Neighbors is gone. I think it's unlikely that Neighbors is available at number 7. KJ says trading out of that spot's a no-brainer move as long as you can find a partner. I mean, here's what you have to hope. So somebody's going to come up for a quarterback, right? Because you've got Minnesota, the Raiders, and the Broncos, who are all quarterback hungry. But do they come up ahead of you? Do they come up to the Chargers at 5? Do they come up to 6? That's the question. What's a position I feel comfortable not drafting? Punter and kicker, kicker, long snapper. Feel good about all of those positions. Seriously. I mean, corner, you'd want a depth guy. Safety, I don't want them to draft a safety because they have other priorities and they should sign a veteran safety. Inside linebacker, need. Defensive line, need. Outside linebacker, need. Defensive line, need. Offensive line, obvious need. Could take 2. I don't think they will. Wide receiver, need. Tight end, need. Running back, I'd be fine if they don't draft one. The third guy, I like Jonathan Ward, and I think they can have an undrafted free agent compete there. Did I miss a position? I think quarterback, no. I mean, I think they need a very smart inside linebacker who could play 3 downs to go next to Kenneth Murray at linebacker. And I think they need an outside linebacker who can play a lot of downs and be Danico Autry would be ideal. You know, Darius Robinson from Missouri is seen as a Danico Autry replacement. He'd be a great guy. You know, that's why if you could get yourself 3 picks in the first 3 rounds, Darius Robinson's a guy that could be in play probably in the 2nd round. Braswell from Alabama is a good outside linebacker type that could really help them. If they traded down, you know, I've been playing with the trade down like to 18 with Cincinnati. I mean, if you look at what's there then and you wanted to wait for Morgan or Paul as your offensive lineman till 38 or 44 conceivably, and you're at 18, you look at what the strength is there. Latu from UCLA might be the best pick at 18. Chop Robinson's another guy. Those are the 4 kind of edge rusher types who I think could be really big time players for the Titans. Shane asks, what player on the roster do I think has the highest chance to be traded before the deadline? So we're talking about like Halloween or early November. Who do I think could be traded? I mean, that's kind of a silly question, no offense, but to look that far out, have no idea how they're playing, what they're doing, who's good, who's not. I mean, no idea. Williams asking about Higgins. I have no interest in Higgins. I didn't have big interest in Higgins before Ridley. They need a young receiver now. At certain positions, they need to get young. They need a young cornerback now. They need a young receiver now. Guys who have 6 years ahead of them, 8 years ahead of them, ideal. If the right side of the line comes from in-house, KJ says, Duncan, Radens, NPF, Brunskill, how do I see right guard and right tackle shaking out? Well, I think Brunskill is probably the right guard with the outside chance for Charles. Radens there too. So Radens, Brunskill, Charles competing for right guard, with Brunskill as the favorite, but maybe Radens. And right tackle is, right now it's between Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jalen Duncan. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Nicholas Petit-Frere, I know he doesn't have a great deal of dog in him, and I've heard some conversations about that. And that is a concern with him. And Duncan has more of it. And I like Duncan's upside. But Nicholas Petit-Frere played a reasonably good season as a rookie third-round pick. So I would think it could be a reasonably good competition. I like them. I like Duncan's upside, but I would give NPF an early lead. And I would think he would go first. I think he would take the lead first. Caleb Farley in more space. Somebody suggesting turning him into a safety. In more space, I think there's more occasion for more bad things to happen. Am I surprised that Tannehill hasn't landed anywhere? Not really. I mean, I think he's in a good situation to wait for somebody to get hurt now. When somebody gets hurt, he could be a major solution. I am brought to you by Zen Sports. I always hold up my trusty coaster here. I'm going to put it right in front of the Rolling Stones famous logo. Zen Sports. Go get their app, get it on your phone, and start betting there. Use code TNPaul to sign up, TNPaul. Make a bet as little as $10. Using that code, you get a free membership to paulkuharski.com for 1 year. If you don't have that already, that's quite a treat. Look, I would bet. I think that Saturday in the tournament is going to be not competitive. I know a lot of people rooting for NC State, a lot of SEC people rooting for Alabama. I think everybody's going to be disappointed. I think Purdue covers giving 9.5. I think UConn covers giving 11.5. I just think they're the two best teams by a good margin. You bet both of those, it's plus 262. You make that bet, and then we set up for a Monday night matchup that could be, phenomenal, classic. Purdue and UConn, the two best teams in the country. That's how I see it unfolding. But however you see it unfolding, you can go to Zen Sports, make your bet there, and reap your profits. You have a no danger first wager, so you can bet a lot more than the $10. You can bet up to $1,000 on a bet that's up to plus $500. If you win, throw the confetti over your head. If you lose, you've got the assurance of getting your money back in 24 hours. you've got that money right back, and you didn't lose anything. So it's a great deal from Zen Sports, a great partner to me. Check them out. It's a great place to make your weekend bets. You could also bet on the Yankees, who are pretty much a sure thing right now, the way they're playing, which delights me. I am about to buy a new used car, which is, speaking of bets, very exciting. I'm a Honda Accord owner. It's time for new. And I think I'm going to go crazy and get a Honda Accord. Very exciting times in the Kuharski household. Also exciting to go watch my son play middle school baseball today after an excellent hitting lesson tomorrow. Hopefully he'll get some strikes and be able to knock some things out of the park. Let's retweet and remind everybody that we're here in order to not have people say that they missed out or didn't know that we were here in the middle of this excellent conversation. Because we don't want them missing out. I'm not seeing it on the Twitter. Why is it not on the Twitter? Have we seen it on the Twitter? Why are people so hung up on Brock Bowers? We have good tight ends, says Brandon. They just need better coaching. Shouldn't waste picks on luxury choices. I don't know that he's a luxury choice, and I think you're probably overrating the tight ends. And Chig may or may not be good. He wasn't very good last year. Josh Wiley, we don't know if he's going to be good or not. And, third guy, I don't even know if Wesco's on the roster or not, but you could always use better than that. Brock Bowers is an intriguing prospect, though if you're drafting a first-round tight end, certainly first half of the first-round tight end, he needs to be, I think, physically dominant. And Bowers is 6'3". It could be great, but the Titans need to complete their work on the perimeter and on the offensive line, and they need to draft a premium position, and tight end is not a premium position. I agree with you that it's a luxury choice for them. It's not a luxury choice for the Jets, I don't feel like, and I think he's going to be a very good player. But I don't think he should be in play for the Titans. David Jackson wants to know if I'd take Rome or Alt if I had to make a pick. That's a very tough call. I like Dunze a lot. And again, I would in many ways defer to Bill Callahan about what's there later. I would in many ways think about trading down there, but I might lean. Stumping me, David Jackson. I really want left tackle fixed. If they could fix left tackle, getting Rome at 7, then I'd take Rome. But if Alt is what they need to fix left tackle, then I'm taking Alt. So that's not much of an answer. Where was Panda ranked when we took him that high? Bryn wants to know. Ranked by who? I mean, we get a question here about draft value. I'm going to put a good calculator. This is a very good calculator from Chase Stewart that I've hopefully will send there. I think I sent it. I would use that calculator to draft value, to look at draft value, and then where's DT? And this is a very good Draft Tech has translated the Jimmy Johnson chart into this year's draft, so it covers the compensatory selections and all of that. And I highly recommend using that chart. So I play with the combination of those two things when I'm playing around with that. I don't need HLP hitting. Somebody suggesting a hitting coach for baseball. I've got my guy, Chris Riley. Simon loves him, and he's fantastic. Somebody's asking me if I had only one concert to go to, Springsteen or the Rolling Stones. I've seen the Rolling Stones 3 times, I think. I've seen Springsteen 20-something times. If those are my choices, I'll go see Springsteen. A night at Springsteen concert is like one of my favorite things. KJ says, I figured they were drafting the other safety as why they haven't signed a veteran yet. Why they haven't signed a veteran yet is because the price for the veterans is too expensive. And, those guys are entitled to wait and see what the market does. But what the market's going to do is give a good share of teams who want a safety a chance to draft a safety. And then there are fewer teams competing for the veteran safeties. And less demand means, supply and demand dictates that the price isn't going to go up for those veteran safeties after teams fill out in the draft. Brian says he loved hearing Callahan say Key is a rotational pass rusher, not like last year. Well, I didn't have a lot of alternatives to him last year either. Who did you want in instead of him? Weaver? Murphy? Both not good either. And those are the alternatives now. So it's great to say he's a rotational pass rusher right now. They don't have anybody to put in. So they have to have an alternative before they can make him situational pass rusher. I mean, there's not great talent. Brian is asking, with about $30 million left, do you think you sign more free agents or hold on to that money? Few free agents I like. Isaiah Simmons, Tyus Bowser, Taven Bryant, Andreas Pete, Justin Simmons. I think I think they'll sign a veteran safety in free agency, and maybe an offensive lineman. Those are the 2 spots that I would look. And maybe somebody shakes out. I don't know that you're getting a DeAndre Hopkins quality guy, but maybe somebody shakes out later that helps them as well. I do remember that Mike Vrabel said the waiver wire was going to be packed the Monday after the draft, and there were like 3 or 4 guys on it who were worth a damn. Does Alt give me a Trevor Penning vibe? He does not. He does not. Does he give you a Trevor Penning vibe? Logan wants to know if he could bet my money, and my money is unavailable. Derek said Bowers is a game changer for Levis. Well, Washington, the little receiver who'll be available in the 3rd round, could be a game changer for Levis. Dunze or Neighbors could certainly be game changers for Levis. So, there are a lot of guys that could be game changers. Joe Alt can be a game changer for Levis. There are a lot of guys that could be game changers for Levis. Somebody in here likes Guyton, wants to see a trade back for Guyton. I haven't seen anything and I haven't investigated Guyton at a high level. I know a lot of people like him. I think he's in that bunch of guys after Alt and Fashanu who are intriguing. They're taking a left tackle in the first 2 picks here. I can't see a scenario where they do not. Is my Springsteen autograph one of my favorite things? It certainly is. The book has a prominent place in the room, thanks to you. Rank the AFC South quarterbacks for Sam, please. I mean, you have to imagine Stroud sustains, but I do think he will dip. And Trevor Lawrence has not really delivered, though I like Trevor Lawrence a lot. So I'm going to go Stroud, Lawrence. I'm not a Richardson guy, and he hasn't played yet. So I'm going to go Levis, Richardson. Derek says, looking back, I didn't realize how much Vrabel deserved all the grilling you gave him. And now, Derek, there's a second part to that. Continue. I'll look for your second comment. And now, David Jackson continues here with good questions. How long do I think it takes for the team to integrate all these new additions? Potential to start the season slow but finish stronger. I mean, that's a great question. And Chad Brinker raised that very thing, in the story I did that was spurred by the All-22, which David Jackson's a part of, where I asked both Brinker and Carthon like what their expectations are for this team this season. And Brinker, talked with hope, but raised this very thing. New coaching staff, new conditioning stuff, and a roster that's going to have so much newness to it. How much time does it take for that stuff to come together? We've seen it happen fast. You'd like to think it can happen fast, but it's not unreasonable to think also that it could take some time to gel. And things come together at different paces, in different places, under different circumstances, and the like. And I think that'll be, David, one of the biggest stories of this whole deal is how long does it take for guys to get to know each other, to feel comfortable together. The practice stuff is limited in a way that's not favorable in terms of getting, the max out of that. And there are going to be times that require patience. And I think management understands that, and the coaches understand that. And, they're going to need the fans at some times to understand it, who probably aren't going to understand. They're going to look at these big names and say, hey, these guys should come in and fix it. But it's not like, buying 5 guys for your baseball lineup and their ability to immediately change things by stepping into the batter's box or walking into left field or to second base. On defense or into the bullpen for that matter. It's just a different deal. And so I think as fans, I would root for speed, but understand that, it might not pan out that way. And I think that's a theme to be aware of. What else we got here? Sam liked Herndon's piece yesterday. If you're not a member of the site, you're missing out on that. He kind of wrote, stay at 7, trade from 7, stay at 38, trade from 38. What could and should happen in all of those scenarios. His usual very smart look at stuff like that. Sam likes the idea of moving to the teens and coming out with Fashanu and extra picks for the other needs. I do too. And Zach wrote today, and I think this is a really well-made point, and this is why the draft, and I think teams do this too, not just draft media. Like the month of April is unnecessary. Now, your work expands. It's called Parkinson's law. Work expands into the time you have to fill it. So if you've got until April 28th or whatever the date is to decide what you want to do in the draft, then you will take that time. But if the draft was March 28th, you would get the work done by March 28th. And I think most teams would, once they got used to it, rather have the guys for that month in-house, beginning to train, beginning to learn the playbook and all of that stuff. And it would be healthier. And you wouldn't sit and reconsider and reconsider and reconsider. Now, draft media has somehow taken Olu Fashanu and turned him into, as Zach wrote, like OL 4/5, when he was OL1 and LT1 and, maybe shifted to LT2. But, small hands alone are not enough to drop them that far. And I talked to Roos and Lawan and Hopkins and Kevin Mawai, and 3 out of 4 of them said small hands absolutely not a factor in the game. Only Brad Hopkins thought it was a thing. The other 3 of them said not an issue at all, and certainly not the sort of issue that should be moving him as far as he seems to have moved in the draft industrial complex. And has a lot of really, really good traits, particularly as a pass blocker. So I think it's crazy. And I think that extra month gives people too much time to find ways to break guys down who they like. Hey, we like this guy. Now let's spend a month finding reasons not to like this guy. I'm not saying that's what happened with him, but that happens with a lot of people. And it's not, I don't think it's a healthy part of the process. Kane wants to know who would be my guess for the most likely trade back partner for the Titans. I don't know. Minnesota put something out this week that, maybe they're okay with Darnold this year and waiting on a quarterback till next year. Is that posturing? I mean, it seems like Minnesota, at 11, then it's the Raiders at 12 and the Broncos at 13, if I have that right. It's one of those 3 coming up for a quarterback. And you just got to hope they don't go ahead of you. That's the big issue. Beard game 100%. So I am doing better on the neck here. I do have some vicious itch though. Run the wishbone and pound the clock, Tremaine wants. For those of you that can't see the beard, I know that that 15 seconds was fascinating. Alex asks, do I think with Sneed and Cheeto that McCreary solely plays in the slot? How do I think the rotation works out? Yeah. I mean, McCreary is the slot corner. I'm sure they'll change it up once in a while to throw somebody off. But I thought McCreary did quite well in the nickel last year. I think he's one of the few young guys on this team that's showed steady progress. I think he'll hugely benefit from being with 2 veterans of that quality. I would think that Sneed will track the best receiver on the other team, though Callahan mentioned to me that Cheeto has done that as well. And look, maybe there's some situations where they think they're better off staying left and right in the game, or Cheeto has a favorable matchup and they do it that way. But I think Sneed, the reason you go get a guy like Sneed is because of what Sneed did in Kansas City. And what Sneed did in Kansas City, as Andy Reid told me in that snippet that I sent out, was, who's the best receiver? He's got the best receiver. Jim, I appreciate the compliment. How do I think Ridley will fit in? I mean, I think when Ridley's at top of his game, Ridley's really good. I've said multiple times, I think Ridley getting used to being a very highly paid guy who's looked at as a superstar, needs to put up superstar numbers. That's the concern. The concern with me for Ridley is off the field stuff. And if he can manage that stuff, I expect very big things from him. We'll go a few more minutes here enjoying the conversation. Oh, Banksy tells me a damn score that I don't want to see yet. I do. Hibbs is asking me about Darius Robinson, and I do like him. Is the combine becoming obsolete now that every game is on TV? Somewhere there's film and tape on everybody. Move that draft earlier. The combine's not obsolete because they need the physicals. And so the combine, there always needs to be a gathering of the prospects for people to get them, tug on them, you know, test them out physically, and do all of that. I do. I love the idea of what Marvin Harrison Jr. said, in terms of, not going to train to run and all that stuff. Train to be a football player. It would be great if we got to a point, I think, where everybody united and said that. Look at the tape. The tape is my resume, not my 40 here, not my broad jump and all of that, because I think that stuff is silly. But I don't know. And I think that's probably far away. But I do think the bigger deal the league tries to make out of the combine, the more pushback there will be from the guys who make a particular combine a bigger TV show. So the 5 biggest guys at next year's combine will be less inclined to make the TV show something you want to watch. They get nothing out of it except some risk of straining a hamstring or a groin or something that sets back their process. And they can't really hurt their draft position by not participating. DB is in Hawaii, and we are all jealous. Kane wants to know if I think tight end is a priority in the draft, or they're just rolling with Chicken Wiley. I think they'd love to have a tight end. I just think you can't get everything. So, if a great one is there and happens to fall in their lap and they take him above, I don't know, a corner, or something like that, it's possible, but I don't know that they can prioritize it based on all the other things that they need. Yeah, there are no June 1st cuts coming on this team, Jennifer. And you can make a June 1st cut now and just designate it as a June 1st cut. So if they had somebody like that, they wouldn't necessarily wait. IR Hoshi wants me to go cover a different team. It's such a dumb, regular question I got. Yeah, because you don't like me, I'm going to pick up and take my 25 years of experience on this team and go start from scratch somewhere else, despite the fact that I'm making a great living covering this team with people who want to hear candid assessments about it. Take your blankie and go somewhere else. Who's my number one receiver? Who do I think fits the Titans scheme the best? I mean, I think Neighbors is the guy that fits the Titans the best. He's just got that explosiveness that would go very nicely with Will Levis's arm. And so it's hard not to like him. But any of those 3 guys would fit in beautifully here. Kane Martin says he's hoping for 3 or 4 primetime games. You better reduce your expectation. I mean, I think 1 or 2. They're not basing primetime games on free agency. Mean Mug says, at what point does Bowers become too good of a value to pass up? Well, probably like 17, 18, 19, it becomes too good of a value to pass up. But they still haven't fixed their left tackle problem. They still haven't addressed wide receiver. They still don't have an edge rusher. So he's not too good of a value to pass up there, because you still haven't filled your 3 primary needs. So to me, there's no point at which it becomes too good of a value to pass up. I mean, if they traded down to 35 and Bowers was on the board at 35, he's too good of a value to pass up. But they still don't have a left tackle or an edge rusher or another receiver. So is he that good of a value to pass up? No, I'd trade to somebody that wanted to draft him. Banks, he says that Houston will have the same problem introducing so many new players. Well, a lot of their new players on one side of the ball is one thing. On defense, a lot more action on defense than on offense, right? And they're coming into a winning team, which is easier than coming into a team that played badly. And they're coming into a team that the coaching staff and the front office have been in place. So there are easier circumstances to bring a whole bunch of new people into, and there are harder circumstances. So one of the Titans' big changes is that the coaching staff is all new. Well, Houston doesn't have that. I do not. Christopher Brent is still looking for ways for T. Higgins to join this team, with the Titans taking Alt at 7 and then trading 38 for T. Higgins to get 3 top wide receivers like Houston. Higgins is very expensive. They've just given Ridley a very expensive contract, and 3 wide receivers who are old. I don't know where Higgins is, but he's how many years in? This be his 5th. You need a guy who's at the beginning. They need a young receiver. You need a mix of age. So Hopkins is over 30. Ridley's pushing 30. And the other guy needs to be at the beginning. You have to match it up age-wise. John asks about help for Big Jeff and Landry in the draft. Yeah, I mean, they obviously need an inside linebacker and they need an edge rusher. Ideally, it would be somebody like Archie who could play and outside backer, but those guys are hard to come by. We've talked a little bit about Darius Robinson from Missouri, who's that kind of guy. So he'd be particularly good. But, edge is one of their 3 big needs now. Left tackle, another wide receiver still to get the explosive package of guys that they want, and edge. I mean, the pass rush is completely insufficient right now. All right, 1 or 2 more, and we're out of here. I appreciate all of you coming. Is the green dot linebacker issue as substantial as it seems, or is a serviceable linebacker available on day 2 or 3? Well, day 2 is the 2nd and 3rd round. Those are premium picks still. You can get more than a serviceable inside linebacker on day 2 in the 2nd or 3rd round. 4th round, you can get pretty good linebacker. Do I think Burks is on the roster when the season starts? Sure. What are they going to do with Burks? I don't think you're going to cut him. I mean, I think it's just a matter of where he is in the pecking order, and I think he should be low. Last one, Kane, back to Kane. Do I think they roll out new uniforms with the new stadium? No. They changed uniforms not very long ago. You don't want your team to be one of these teams that changes uniforms every couple of years. You know who the teams are that change uniforms every couple of years? Teams that suck and have nothing for their fans to be excited about except going to the pro shop to buy yet another version of their uniform. You want the Titans to be in these uniforms for a long time, build some tradition in them. You don't want your team changing garb every 6 years, every 8 years, every 10 years. It looks silly. Silly. It's a loser kind of thing. Don't root for that. Appreciate all of you coming. Check out Zen Sports for sure. Do not block the box, and be sure to lock your locks. I appreciate each and every one of you. Join PaulKuharski.com